Good evening, everyone. Happy Women's Day. My name is Shurobhi Korroy, and I am a faculty in the Department of Economics, Herombo Chandra College, Kolkata. First of all, I would like to extend my thanks to all the organizers for giving me this opportunity of presenting my paper today in this auspicious occasion of International Women's Day. Thank you so much. The title of my presentation is Detrimental Impact of Gender Inequality upon Economic Growth and Empirical Analysis and the Post-COVID-19 Scenario. Introduction. Throughout the world, gender inequality has always been a cause of concern for development of any country. Gender inequality hinders the development and economic growth. Gender equality, on the other hand, stimulates the economic growth. Gender inequality and its impact upon the economic growth has always been an important topic of research for economists for many years. Existing literature suggests that gender inequality hinders development. We can include the example given by the work of Stephen Clausen in 2000. He found that gender inequality in education has a direct impact on economic growth through reducing the average quality of human capital. Reshmi Umesh Aro Reinhardt study used access to education and health as the indicator of gender inequality and the state level openness in different states in India, and shown that at the subnational level in India, higher per capita income is associated with lower gender inequality. Kevinimi M in her paper identified that women still have few career opportunities and on average have wages less than that of men. Jayashree Sengupta in her paper found that India has slipped backward in gender gap index, which is calculated in 4 dimensions like health, education, economy and politics. With this background, my paper includes the following objectives of study: to analyze how gender inequality affects the economic growth, to make an analysis of gender inequality in India compared to the neighboring countries and some developed countries of the world in some relevant gender-related variable like gender inequality index, maternal mortality rate, adolescent birth rates, share of seats in parliament, percentage of female population with at least some secondary education, female labor force participation rate. And also to present an empirical analysis of how sex ratio at birth, infant mortality rate, female enrollment in secondary education affects the economic growth in India, and to analyze the impact of COVID-19 pandemic upon the gender inequality in India, especially in the employment or the labor market. The data source and methodology have included the secondary data for statistical analysis and presentation and obtained from the sources like World Development Indicator World Bank, Gender Inequality Index data of Human Development Reports UNDP, and the variables which are included for the study are Gender Inequality Index, Maternal Mortality Ratio, Adolescent Birth Rate, Share of Seats in Parliament, Percentage held by women, Population with at least some secondary education, Labor Force Participation Rate, GDP, Sex Ratio at Birth, Infant Mortality Rate and School Enrollment in the secondary education of female. I have analyzed the trend in the gender related variables like as far as Gender Inequality Index of 2021 in India is concerned, the performance of India and its neighboring countries have not been up to the mark when we are comparing the situation with the performance of developed countries. Now if we consider the case of the situation of maternal mortality ratio reduction, we find that India has performed well in 2017 compared to the neighboring countries excepting China and Vietnam, but when we compare with some developed countries, we find that India is much lagging far behind the other countries in reduction of MMR. In case of reduction of adolescent birth rate in 2021, we find that India's performance has been better compared to the neighboring countries, but it is remaining much higher when we compare with some developed countries of the world. Here again, in comparison to the developed countries, in India's performance is not up to the mark. Now we analyze the share percentage held by women of the seats in parliament of India and the neighboring and the developed countries. We find that India's performance has been far from satisfactory compared to the neighboring countries as well as some developed countries of the world. Trend in population with at least some secondary education, 25% 25 and older female, shows that as far as percentage of female population with secondary education concerned, even some neighboring countries like Vietnam, China, Bangladesh has performed better compared to India. Performance of developed countries has also been much better compared to India. Female labor force participation rate, that is, which is an important parameter, for India has been much lower compared to the other countries of the world and even to the neighboring countries of India. Now, to investigate association between the gender inequality index and the impact on GDP, we can present a scatter diagram, and this scatter diagram is showing the negative association between the two relevant variables, which shows that if GDP increases, the GII will fall, or if GII gender inequality increases, GDP will fall. To test this empirically, we consider the hypothesis that gender inequality does not affect GDP, which is to be tested against gender inequality affects GDP. For this, I have carried out a regression analysis and the result has been presented here. Using Stata, the regression results here confirm that the log values I have taken into consideration for the relevant variables, and here the results show that the gender inequality index has a negative, which is statistically significant impact upon the GDP. So gender inequality lowers the GDP and gender equality increases GDP, and other variables like sex ratio at birth has a positive association or impact upon GDP. Infant mortality rate has a negative impact upon GDP, and the secondary education enrollment of female has a positive impact upon increasing the GDP. Regression results indicate that the gender inequality reduces the GDP as shown by the negative coefficient, which is statistically significant. So this reaffirms the assumption and proves that gender inequality hinders economic growth. The next section, I have discussed the impact of COVID-19 pandemic upon the gender inequality, especially in the employment sector, the gender inequality in employment. The devastating pandemic has resulted in loss of employment for women, with majority of insecure or informal and lower paying jobs. Across the world, women earn less, save less, hold less secure jobs generally employed in the informal sector only. Economic inequalities faced by women get aggravated by the COVID-19 pandemic with disproportionate negative effect on women and their employment opportunities. The trend in LFPR percent in urban areas for the persons of ages 15 years and above all India show that between the period January-March 2020 to January-March 2022, during this pandemic period, the labor force participation rate for both male and female has fallen, and there has been a drastic fall in female labor force participation rate. And the recovery has also not been gender neutral. It has been slower for female compared to the male. Again, we consider the worker population ratio between the same period, and there also we find that it has fallen much between January-March 20 to January-March 2022, fallen more for women compared to their male counterparts. And unemployment rate has also reduced very marginally during the period, whereas it has reduced for male at a high percentage level. The reduction has been much slower when we were approaching the recovery after the pandemic. So all these highlight the fact that the COVID-19 has rather widened the gender inequality in the employment sector. So what should be the recommendations? The measures to reduce MMR. It is essential to improve and establish healthcare infrastructure in village and remote area to reduce MMR significantly in India. Adolescent birth rate, there is a need to improve awareness about women and the child rights. Encouragement to education of young women awareness regarding use benefit of contraceptives to reduce adolescent birth rate, end of child and early marriage. Increasing the share of seats in parliament, and for that social institution transformation can be effective by including more women into politics, which needs improved educational opportunity for women, financial freedom, stability. increasing the percentage of female population with at least some secondary education by betterment of productivity of women and through boosting the standard of living of their families, enabling them to access the required skill, technology, cooperative management, and improving the female labor force participation rate, the sex ratio at birth and infant mortality rate. Like policy action should be focusing on the needs and requirements of marginal sections to provide maternal and child health services in India, targeted at educating marginalized communities regarding the significance of maternal and child health services, including vaccination, antenatal and postnatal checkups. Thank you so much. Thank you.